In today's video, I'm going to use the triangle word, but this time to create that triangle, I'm grouping the flowers together. If this is a style that you would like to learn, keep watching today's video. Welcome back to today's tutorial. Today I'm going to be using my trusty urn that you've probably seen a few times on the channel, but I'm going to do a triangle or a triangle shape that's arranged in more of a grouped manner than that traditional style where you see flowers distributed evenly on the left and the right side. And I'm going to use my trusty dog bowl that I discussed in this video here. If you haven't seen it, pop back and have a look. This is a dog bowl, a bowl that you would put dog food or water into, and I discovered them while out shopping and realised that they fit perfectly into the top of my container, so I was really pleased with that. But before I place it in, I'm going to use some of the floral tape to hold it into place. I'm going to be creating quite a tall design today, so I need to make sure my mechanics are nice and secure, and I'm pretty much going to do a sort of triangular shape, but it's going to be in a grouped manner. And I'm using some lilies. Now, I very rarely arrange with lilies, and it's not really a flower that I use a great deal of, but I've got some here in the studio. They're quite open, and I thought it would be a good opportunity to use them. So before I put my dog bowl into place, and if you're not sure if you've heard me correct, I am saying dog bowl, as in a bowl a dog would drink out of. I'm going to put 2 pieces of the Oasis Fix there on the top, because that will hold the rim of my container on the top and stop it sliding around. So I've got about 3/4 of a block of floral foam, and I've put it sideways, but I have left enough room on the side for me to put some foliage, and that is nice and secure there on the top. And it also gives me a nice deep vessel to fill with water to keep my foam hydrated. And as my arrangement is going to be quite tall, I've taken the camera back a little bit so you can get the full height of the arrangement in when I'm talking. This is your traditional urn, and because it's quite a tall container, I'm going to create a design that's about 1.5 times the height of my container. And I'm going to use the delphinium in the centre to create the height and the top of my arrangement. So I'm working towards the back of the foam. If we just cut this one off, you'll be able to see I'm in the back of the foam, and I'm roughly in the middle, and it gives me all this space in the front to add my flowers so that that arrangement is 3-dimensional and it's not flat. The last thing we want to do is have that really flat arrangement. And even though I'm using in the centre the main stem of the larkspur, I beg your pardon, there are still lots of offshoots on the side which I can add in at the bottom of the arrangement. So the taller, straighter pieces of the larkspur are coming towards the top. And I'm going to stagger the heights down so that they're not all finishing in exactly the same place. So this is a larkspur. This is the annual delphinium, and I absolutely love these. If you're quite talented, then you can dry these. If you've got somewhere at home that doesn't get too damp, then you can quite easily hang them upside down to dry, and you get beautiful flowers to use later on in the year. So I've staggered them all downwards. I'm just going to slide over so you can see. I've staggered them downwards. That's going to help create visual movement and bring your eye down towards the base. And before I add any more flowers in, I'm going to create the width with some foliage. And rather than using traditional greeneries like eucalyptus or pittosporum or some lovely curved pieces of ruscus, I'm going to use some more modern greenery instead. And I'm going to do 2 groupings on either side. Now I need to come back further in the foam to create the sides. And on one side, I'm going to group fatsias together. So these 2 are going to help create the width. And in an ideal world, our widths are roughly half of the distance of the height, and that makes a nice proportionate triangle. But today I'm possibly going a little narrower than I normally would do. And that's mainly because the greenery that I've got is going to dictate the side measurements of my floral design. So maybe that's about half of the distance of the height, but it gives you an idea of the proportions that I'm trying to create. The width generally is half the distance of the top section. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it's a little bit of a guideline. And with the ones that I've got left, I'm going to add these in at the back, not to waste them, but it also helps to give actual weight, stop that design falling over, and it also makes my arrangement three-dimensional, which you're going to get sick of me hearing because I say it on a regular basis. And in this gap here at the front, I'm going to use the lovely Ming fern. Now you might have seen me use this a couple of times recently because I've had quite a lot of it in the studio for different jobs that I've been working on. But that's going to give a really nice bit of movement slightly down over the front of the container, and it's going to give me a really lovely contrast in texture alongside that flat begonia leaf, which I forgot to name for you. So this is the elephant ear or the begonia leaf. This grows in my garden. This one is an imported foliage, although you might be in a part of the world where that also grows in your garden. And then I'm going to add in at the back and at the front some of this lovely cordyline, and it's a gorgeous colour which is almost going to tell you the colour combinations that I'm going to use for the rest of the design. So this has a bit of a pinky edge to it, and that cluster on the back there is going to reinforce the outline that I'm trying to create. Now I do have another foliage in the studio called Chicken Tails, which is this one here. And if you don't like the airiness of the larkspur, then we could add this in at the back just to give it a bit more depth. But I really like the airiness that you get from just using the larkspur. But what I've done for the front section is I've cut off the side shoots of the chicken tails. I think this is a cordyline as well, and I'm going to group these together at the front. So hopefully you're sort of getting a bit of a theme that rather than all the flowers being evenly distributed from the left to the right, I've got clusters and groupings of foliage instead, and it gives the design a bit more of a modern feel to it. And that's how we're looking so far. And just in this front section, just to break up those two pieces of greenery, I've got the good old conifer, another one that grows in my garden. It's a bit of a citrusy, limey green, and that's going to work nicely at the front. It's got a little bit of a curve to it, which helps because it's going to curve down over the front of my container, and that for me works perfectly well. And I really can't decide whether I want to have the chicken tails at the back. So I'm going to put it in, and if I don't like it, I'll take it out at the end. I just think, is it too much? I can't decide, but we're going to leave it in. So next I'm going to go with some of the allium, and these actually have a lovely little bit of bounce to them. So my plan was to put them up here quite straight, but I think instead I'm going to add them in at the front. So I'm going to keep those until I've added in my lilies. And as a general rule, I don't tend to use a whole lot of lilies. They're a little bit out of fashion at the moment. They're not the most popular of flower to use. And they're a little bit temperamental because they either open too quickly or they don't open at all. But I'm going to do a group of these coming down on one side of the arrangement, starting a little bit lower than the larkspur there at the top. And I'm looking to have the smaller heads at the top, getting bigger as we come down to the focal point. And I must remember that behind me is a stilby and peonies, which are two very seasonal flowers at the moment. But what I want to do with the lily is keep them clustered quite tight together to create a little bit of interest and to get your eye to travel down towards the focal point. Now I have got 4, but I've put 3 in so far. I'm not sure if I need the 4th one, but I might add it in more towards the end. Now I'm going to grab those peonies and they can come down on the opposite side of the lily. So we've almost got like two columns, bringing your eye with the different colours and the different textures right the way down to the focal point. Now I've had these in the studio for a couple of days just because I wanted to get them opening and showing a bit of colour. And look at the size on that one. That is absolutely ginormous. Now, lots of people comment to us florists that you can buy cheaper flowers in the supermarket, but there's no way, maybe there is a way, you don't often get a head quite as big as that. So I'm going to do the same technique, start if I can with a smaller flower head towards the top. That's not always possible to do, especially if you're having to rely on a supermarket to buy your flowers, because you can't always get them in a variety of sizes. And I'm going to do that same sort of method. Just bring the flowers down, getting bigger and bigger as I come towards the focal point. These are just magical. Now I think this is Sarah Bernhardt. It's not an unusual variety, it's a fairly standard peony. You might have something like this in your garden. But aren't they just amazing and similar? I would normally encourage you to put 5 heads there because 5 tends to be a bit more pleasing to the eye, but today we're going to use 4 because this is just huge. And that one is going to tuck in there towards the front. How amazing is that? How amazing is that? Now I probably wouldn't encourage you to arrange flowers when they're as open as this, but it's far better for me with a tutorial to have flowers when they're fully open. From my garden and available from all good florists is the gorgeous Astilbe. It's a completely different texture to my peony and my lily. But what I don't want to do is put it on the side of the arrangement where I have the really fluffy fern, because it's very similar in texture and that will make the design look quite messy. So what I'm actually going to do is place it in a group on the opposite side. So we have a similar texture on either side of the arrangement, rather than fighting for attention on the same side. And I'm lucky enough to be able to grow some lovely Astilbe in the garden, and I do like to leave them in the garden. I'm not a fan of cutting everything. I do like to be able to see it out of the window. I've got 6, but I'm only going to use 4. That's going to give me a really nice cluster on that one side. And then in this area here, I'm going to use those lovely alliums. And because the head is quite strong and it's weighty, it is pulling down, but it's giving me that lovely curve. And I think that's going to work so well in there. It's a nice contrast against that very fussy fern. That big round head is going to look like it's nestled in amongst the fern. So it's going to give a really nice bit of interest on the side of the arrangement. And I've got 5 of these, so I think that's going to work out quite well in this area here. And now what I need to do is to either decide whether the lily is going to come in on this corner here, in this section, whether I use some delphinium, or whether I look for something completely different. So my decision is not what I planned. The lily is going to come a little bit further towards the back, just to make the outline shape a little bit clearer. I've got this quite large leaf here, and the lily is going to come out to join it. I've still got a gap in here that needs filling. You might not be able to see it from the camera, but it's in that area, just tucked down there where those alliums are. I could put a little bit of extra fluff in there with the greenery, but I'm thinking I'm going to use the delphinium. I'm going to use the delphinium to link with the blue at the top. And this side is definitely longer than the other. So we're just going to push it in the greenery here to get this a little bit shorter. Otherwise my sides aren't equal. Hopefully that's a little bit better. So with all the side shoots of the delphinium, and there are quite a lot of them, I'm going to be able to bring the colour down more towards the front. So I've just cut all the side shoots off, and I've got one larger one left to go, left to use as well. So we'll just feed these in at the front, and then hopefully there won't be such a big gap there in the middle. And this is going to help connect with the blue that's at the top and the back of the arrangement. It's really going to help link the colour through at the bottom. I don't know whether I need to use the spare one. We'll sort of reassess in a moment. But just by using these from that front there, right the way through the peonies and up towards the back, I've got a lovely connection with the blue. And I really don't think I need anything else. That is really quite striking. I think at this stage, if I overfill, it's going to become messy and you're going to lose the characteristic groupings of this design. But what I am going to do is just put another little bit of the lime green conifer here in the middle, because from where I'm looking at it, I can still see some floral foam. And now I'm quite pleased that I put that chicken's tail in at the back, because I do think it's prevented the design becoming too transparent. Rather than waste this little piece, I'm just going to pop it in at the back. But the foam at the back has already been covered by the two large begonia leaves there. So this design is really complete. Now the dynamics and the look of the arrangement is going to change as the lilies opened. But as it is now, I think it's really quite striking. This would be fantastic for the back of a church. It will be quite dramatic to see because all the different flower types are really visible. By grouping the flowers together, you don't lose the individual shapes and forms of the flowers. You get a really dramatic look. So I hope you've enjoyed that one. Sometimes when I create designs that are quite tall, I think, should I take this apart and recreate something else with it? And if I've got time, I can do that at a later date. So it's a little bit of a different way of looking at a triangle. I hope you've enjoyed that one. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It's really important to help me get the channel to grow. Like and share and comment in the box below. If you have a question, please let me know, and I look forward to seeing you for another video very soon. Bye for now.